Welcome back, folks. We have now come to our third and final panel session of the day. Thank you for your patience. Now, this last session will highlight a topic of paramount importance and encapsulate what we've seen and learned throughout today. This last session will delve into the pivotal role educational institutions play in shaping the next generation of environmental stewards and the profound impact students can have as catalysts for positive change. Now, to help us examine the intersection of education and climate action and the potential within our schools to drive transformative solutions, please welcome our final moderator of the day, the Deputy Resident Representative of UNDP Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei Darussalam, Ms. Manon Benia. And let me introduce the panelists as well. First being His Excellency Dr. Hoachim Bergstrom is the Swedish Ambassador to Malaysia. He loves homework and deadlines, horses, lemongrass and desserts. That's what his bio says, don't we all? He believes that curiosity, care and commitment can create change. Ms. Fazlinah is the Director of the Curriculum Development Division in the Ministry of Education. She manages and steers the design and development of the national curriculum for 11 languages for primary and secondary schools, as well as for social science subjects. Mr. Thiagarajan Nadeson is the Associate Director for Peninsular Malaysia and Sustainable Market in WWF Malaysia. With 22 years of experience working on conservation initiatives, he believes that the landscape approach that brings government agencies, private businesses, and people is the answer for a long-term solution to revive the critically endangered Malayan tigers, which he is very passionate about in Malaysia. And last but not least, Mr. Samuel Isaiah is the Head of Education Initiatives for YTL Foundation and a recipient of the Merdeka Award. So without further ado, Ms. Benia, floor is yours.
Is this working? Yes. Working, right? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's always a big challenge to be the last panel of the day. I'm often asked to moderate, as the deputy of an organization, to moderate the last panel, but which I think is usually the most important one, because it's going to talk about the next generation and how we can build, stronger awareness on environment education, within Malaysia. So I'm extremely pleased to be here today, and I hope we can focus the attention for the next hour and a half. Before we start, can I just, so we can put ourselves back, because we're very late in the day, to just stand up 1 minute, very, very quickly, okay? And just take a deep breath, because we've seen a lot of examples. We've talked a lot about biodiversity, the role of indigenous community from the policy to the grassroots level. But then we're going to go back to what was the first time. Just take a deep breath, close your eyes, and just think, when was the first time that you were in contact with nature and what kind of impact it had on you, okay? So we take 10 seconds, deep breath, and it's going to bring us into our next topic. So it could be at school, could be with the family, could be a walk in the forest. Just think about it, okay? Thank you. I think now we can sit. And I'm very pleased to facilitate this panel, because first, 2 years ago almost, Alam reached out to me, one that they were initiating this study on environmental education, on sustainable environment education. And she was asking me to moderate a panel to actually launch the study that was going to happen at that time. So this is almost 2 years ago. And at that time, I was telling everyone that I had learned a Malay saying that says, "Tuk kenal maka tak cinta," which, do you understand? Yeah? Malay is okay? Okay, great. If anyone doesn't speak Malay, then it means you cannot love what you don't know. And that's how we had started our panel 2 years ago. And I still remember that that saying, because I think it still resonates today, and we'll look at the findings of that study. And in 2019, FREEM had done a research that was saying that there was very poor level of public understanding on biodiversity. 80% and above of people were not necessarily in contact enough with nature to know why would they care about nature and the connection between nature and society and how important it is. So this is how this study initiated. We are 2 years down the line. And I was asking one a few months back what happened with that study. And she said, look, we're about to release the result. So before we start our panel discussion, I would like to invite Mr. Thiaga from WWF, who has been very closely involved in this study. So this study was a collaborative research with PPPLS, supported by WWF, and involved senior researchers from several universities, University Malaya, UKM, UTP, and University Nottingham, Malaysia. So we're very excited. We'll have a 15 minutes presentation of some of the findings from that research, and then we'll start a dialogue with our very esteemed panelists, and we had a discussion over the coffee break, and I'm sure we'll keep you awake and focused for the next hour and a half, looking at all the great inputs that they can provide to the panel. So Mr. Thiaga, over to you now to share with us some of the findings.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. So teachers always face adversity, right? But they have to be flexible in terms of delivering. So I'm trying to do that, trying to bring justice to that, because what I'm going to present, you cannot view from, can be viewed. Yeah, okay. One, thank you very much. I think that you have done some magic. Okay, so this study, as what Madam Moderator mentioned, that has been going on for some time, from the day that we finalized the instrument for quantitative measurement. Until now, it took about 10 months. We have completed that. So it's our pleasure with the researchers, lead researcher, Professor Dr. Subarna and Prof. Kayan were involved in this today, so that we can actually use this as some kind of prelude towards discussion later on, yeah? So I have about 15 minutes, and I'll try to justify that time by looking into all those things. Overall aim of study methodology, where's our nation now, where we are going, key study recommendations, and conclusions. So the aim of study is to determine the baseline status of EE and ESG integrations in the formal education system. Perhaps that later, if you have any question in terms of what it means by integrations and infusions, I'll be happy to explain. The second aim is to correlate the present status of EE, ESG infusions with pro-environmental behavior. So the method used for this study is a mixed method approach. 4 surveys were created for different study group and administered. And in-depth qualitative data were conducted using semi-structured interviews, and a total of 1,736 samples or respondents. Out of that, teachers, about 633, school administrators, 95, primary school students, 562, and secondary school students, 446. So, where is our nation now? A snapshot of EE, ESD practices in Malaysian schools. When I say Malaysian schools, means that it's actually referring to primary and secondary. Yeah? So, in the first part of the study, we looked into the quantitative and we asked few questions, and it was actually segment into few areas. The first one is formal curriculum. In what topics EE and ESD embedded in the formal curriculum of selected subjects from the perspective of the teachers in primary and secondary school. So when we looked into the quantity part, the finding shows that teachers are not knowledgeable about which curriculum topics have embedded EE elements for integration in selected subjects. So this is the findings based on quantitative. When the qualitative part, few teachers are knowledgeable in EE and ESD integration. When we ask them more questions in a semi-structured interview, and this is what we found out. So overall, based on the responded teachers, we find that the knowledge is not there. Although that years of experience or exposure, but the knowledge is somehow can be further improved. In terms of textbook, in what ways EE or ESD embedded in the textbook or selected subjects? So when we run the survey, teachers are unsure about the ways EE or ESD elements are embedded in the textbook in use, whether it's geography, whether it's English or BM, science. So they were not unsure. They were not sure about where that EE elements are embedded. For instance, in Malay language, when it is in the karangan and the content is in BM, so they tend to teach it as a Malay subject. The content is not properly understood and properly delivered to the student based on their understanding. Yeah. And then qualitative textbooks are unclear for effective EE or ESD delivery and infusions of values. Yeah. I think that the infusions in terms of how that the EE and ESDs are being presented in the textbook can be even better. But I think that it also takes teachers' creativity to infuse it. Then third questions, how is the integrations and infusion of EE or ESD through the formal curriculum in the classroom from the perspective of school management, teachers and the students in primary and secondary schools? So we looked into a few things. One is structured instructions, meaning that how that they actually organize themselves in terms of doing their teaching in the classroom, as well as unstructured instructions, where how that they actually looked into impromptu kind of preparations for them to teach. Yeah? So the finding shows that structured and unstructured approaches for EEASD classroom integration is teacher dependent. So very much depending on the teacher. If teacher is passionate, if the teacher is knowledgeable enough, teacher is exposed to EEASD, then the teaching is of different quality. Teachers' pedagogical knowledge needs to improve. Yeah, teachers' science of teaching needs to be improved so that they can integrate or infuse EE or ESD. In the qualitative part, both structured and unstructured approach are used in EE or ESD delivery. So when we prompt them further, there are elements of them using both instructional and also structured and unstructured approaches. So I'll skip few so that we can actually go to the summary. Yeah? But this PowerPoint will be available and we'll be giving it to the organizer, and the organizer can take it and share if you want. So based on this exercise, there's a few emerging qualitative findings. It shows that it all revolves around the teacher. The teacher is central in EE, ESD integrations. Teachers themselves and students agree to these challenges. The competency of teachers in delivering EESD is important. They must understand EE and ESD clearly without misconceptions. So emphasizing on teacher, emphasizing on their knowledge, emphasizing on their skills, emphasizing on their awareness, emphasizing on their attitude, and eventually how that all those things going to create changes in one behavior is very important. So it has to start with teachers. Teachers who are passionate about EESD can make the effort to help change the mindset of teachers who are not sure where to begin. So even if you want to look into the peer support, it has to start from teachers. That's how this study is reading based on the response from the teachers. And EESD can be integrated in special needs education through teachers who make the effort. So it's not confined within the system or within the formal system that they need to emphasize on normal students, but special students also can be emphasized in terms of how that they getting the E and ESD knowledge. And in terms of school leadership, the effective school leadership is very important. The MOE guide, element merentasi curriculum, must be advocated by school head to all school staffs. So MOE has done a set of things that helps teachers. But is that enough? I think that school leadership has to take it further. Yeah? School heads are key persons to ensure success of EESD initiatives. If they are not fully in support of this or not putting priority on this, whatever effort the MOE do at the federal level or state level stay as it is. The school leadership has to play its part. School heads together with their staff must be committed fully. And school heads must take the opportunity during school assemblies to inform and advise on EE and ESD issues. So clearly that school leadership is important. So overall, this study, the first of its kind within the local primary and secondary school context in Malaysia. So let's look into this a bit deeper when we discuss about curriculum development as well as further discussion. And this was done based on multi-stakeholder analysis approach. And the feedback received from teachers, students, and school leadership provides critical insight into the extent and nature of EESD integrations and fusions. So where are we going? So key recommendation of this study is we need to look into the overall setup of the system. At the moment, the policy for EE and ESD is lacking. And perhaps that is embedded within the existing policy. Perhaps that we need to look into how a policy on EE or ESD can be considered, because policy on EE and ESD will provide a framework and guide for actions. One of the actions that we want to highlight here is the policy can support for the establishments of a ESD training center. Why we are recommending this is because training center will ensure that teachers will be empowered, teachers will be trained, their capacity will be developed, or there will be a support system where they can actually look upon. For instance, like that capacity can actually develop ESD champions in every school. Through the cascading system, they can actually look into how that they can create champions in every school, whether it is teachers, or whether it is students, or school leaderships. Yeah? And then they will have communities of practice where that they can have continuous support to create more teachers. And it has to look into both pre-service and in-service in the teacher training. We have a number of teacher training institutes, but that has to be properly embedded. We know that there are biodiversity courses as well as ESD courses there in IPGs, but that has to be enhanced further. Also that if we can actually create these, embedding Agenda 2030 as well as UN SDGs, SDG 4, Target 4.7, which looks into the quality of education and looking into the global ESD, that will actually create a community of practitioners that actually have wider understanding about what is E and ESD is all about. Yeah, and there's a lot of other things that we can actually benefit, ensure that the teachers benefits if we can have a proper training center. So the way forward through this study is that we need to bring together all EESD efforts through one voice, policy interventions, as well as ESD training center. Among other things, yeah, ESD training center may be one of it. Yeah, teachers are the key in ESD. Teachers need enhancements in understanding ESD, elements in the curriculum and resources. Pedagogical knowledge for E and ESD in the classroom has to move towards interdisciplinary lessons, whether it's between subjects or within the same subjects. And team teaching is very important. And school leadership is central to ensure the whole school approach is effective. Co-curriculum programs should begin to move beyond 5R activities. Yeah? And these activities should look into how community problem can be mainstream and work together with other schools. Yeah? With that, I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thiagarajan, for very clear and comprehensive, and good to see that we have a baseline, a first assessment of where we stand on education for sustainable development. We know that ESD can really have a transformational impact on the way societies perceive, understand, and interact with the natural and human-made environments. No? Schools have a very, very big role to play, and I think you've illustrated the status, but can really help nurturing first the critical thinking of young people who will become future leaders, so they can also help changing social norms and behavior. How do we nurture that critical thinking? Innovators, communicators help to transform, identify solutions if you embed education for sustainable development in the whole curriculum. And they can also become volunteers to start transforming in their own communities the way they interact with nature. So the baseline you have shared from what I see is that it's happening in Malaysia, but based on individual willingness, no? And how if someone is aware or interested, they will embed it into, but there's not a systemic approach within the curriculum. So to start our discussion, I would like us to start with Dr. Hoachim, who's the ambassador of Sweden to Malaysia, because I think many countries look up to Sweden as an example. It seems like that you have managed to embed environmental awareness in every citizen. It seems to be part of your DNA, basically, no? And I think Sweden, since the 1960s, I was reading, has embedded environmental education within the curriculum. So to kickstart that discussion, if you can share with us, what's the recipe, actually, that Sweden has applied, and how can you inspire as well in Malaysia? What can we learn from Sweden experience, no?
Well, thank you so much for thinking of inviting me and for giving me this opportunity to share. I want to be clear that I am here in a mode of curiosity and to learn together with you, not speaking down from the heavens. And I want to be clear also that I'm not an expert, and that's kind of the thing. I don't think that you need to be an expert on sustainability to take on these big issues, and I think our education system is proving that. But I am a product of the Swedish educational system, so I have been, formed within that system, and I'll be able to share a couple of points through that. But I also want to say that we don't have a perfect history. In the 60s and 70s, the environmental conditions of Northern Europe were in some parts quite terrible. And the pollution around the waterways, around the big cities, the air quality, the single-use plastics, etc. There was stuff that was around, and that also, I mean, there were policy initiatives around cleaning that up, but there was also a very strong bottom-up civil society engagement. So I think that is something we can return to. And the last point before I get to some other points, we also have a very harsh climate. And so when you invited us to think about our first kind of memories of being in the nature, I think for me it's being in the snow. And I think the fact that the Northern Europe climate and nature is both our dear, dear friend, but in some ways also our enemy. It kind of demands a respect from us, and I think that has also been part in both civil society, civic, and also policy education. And also, you look at Sweden now, we seem to be a very rich country. 100 years ago, we were a very poor country. And so a lot of our DNA, if you want, around caring for nature comes from that sense of not wasting, not producing, impact on the climate, not producing impact on the environment, but really caring for the surrounding. So I think there's a strong link. I was very interested in this in the earlier discussions between on the links between poverty and awareness about climate, and I think it's there, and I think the history of my country has that. So, although I'm not an expert, I can give a couple of common sense or maybe reflections from a Swede who sort of reads the debate around these issues. And I'm sure I will ramble a little bit, but I want to, before I start rambling, be very clear on a couple of points that I think are important. One is early exposure is key, and part of early exposure is also fostering in young persons a sense of curiosity. Number two, I think it's very important to take on a holistic approach and mainstreaming climate issues. I think we've done that. I think from the 60s when we started our environmental climate education, it's been embedded through and through in both STEM, but also in social science, in history, in geography, through the different kind of disciplines, so mainstreaming. I also think that SDG, or climate action, does not happen in a vacuum from other important issues. I think for us, the links between climate action and democracy, gender, human rights, inclusivity in a broad sense, I think it's important. So treating this as not in a vacuum but related to other things, and also fostering a kind of group action, and through education, through civil society, fostering how to attack this as a society. Number 5, I believe, strong civil society is absolutely key. Change comes from the top, surely, but it also needs to come from the bottom. And in our history, you can also see how a lot of policy has been forced upon politicians by civil society and civil society organizations. And they're really part of also the educational system. We have so many organizations that teach young humans about the nature, about climate change. They go into the mountains, to the forests, and care about the waterways, etc. And lastly, in this stream, I think recognizing teachers and empowering teachers And of course, that also, it's part of that, fostering human rights, education, all that, but recognizing the power of teachers. Again, we have had, due to the history of the nature, or to the development around nature in the part of the world where I'm from, we had a wake-up call in the 60s and 70s, and therefore streamlined climate education. It's part of the entire curriculum. It's again linked to many other issues, and the underlying philosophy is to stimulate curiosity and to give to the pupils a sense of knowledge to promote sustainability. And also, and it's maybe connected to what I've said, one challenge might be to also give to the students a sense of urgency, or a sense of finding it important and relevant and meaningful. And therefore, a lot of focus has been on creating a sense of dialogue around these issues, and involvement and accountability. Lastly, I said that early exposure is really key, and I'll give you an example in 20 seconds or less. I'm working on a project for next year, really, on children's literature for Malaysia. And when I read through the existing children's literature, I saw three big themes. One was on climate change, one was on social issues, and one was about the body and so forth. And I just discovered that there are absolutely fantastic ways in which nature and caring for nature are depicted in educational material, picture books, infotainment, call it what you want, that targets very young kids. And I was very touched by your story earlier about this kind of superstitious myths around nature. And I think this book, it's called Furan. It's about a family who decides to move to a certain place, and they cut down the trees around, and then many things happen. And I won't spoil, I hope it will come out in Malay soon, so you can read it. But essentially, the nature takes revenge. So I think there are many ways in which our kids are really from a very early age exposed to these kinds of themes. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience, which I think a lot of your recommendation and the 5 or 6 points that you have made resonate as well with some of the recommendation from the study, going from the early exposure and how through creativity and reading very, very young, you can influence how young people will relate and perceive their relationship to nature, the mainstreaming whole of society approach, as well as the role of empowering teachers. No? Let me now invite Mrs. Fazlinah, the Deputy Director for the Ministry of Education, to now dive and bring us back to Malaysia after listening to one story, and see, based on the findings that Mr. Thiaga has shared and the experience at MOE, I think it's a timely conversation. You are telling me that the ministry is now reviewing its curriculum. What are your reflections? What are some of the challenges, and how can we strengthen the education on sustainable development?
Thank you very much, Manon. First of all, I would like to thank Suara ALAM for giving me this opportunity to present, what we have in our curriculum, particularly that is related to environmental education. Before I talk about the curriculum, I would like to touch on that children's literature, because that is what my PhD is all about, on children's literature. Children's literature is known to have effects, to give that children experience, or the vicarious experience. That means to have that empathy. So if you want to start on something, on a notion about environment, of course you can start with stories, because children has this affinity with stories. Especially if a teacher can tell the story very well, they would be very much attracted to read. So if you have inculcated the culture of reading, then the whole new world is open, to them, for them to explore. All right, coming back to the curriculum, Mr. Thiagarajan, have you got a peek at our new framework? Because the recommendations that you have is exactly what we are going to put into the new curriculum, which will be rolled out in 2027. I would like to pick up on certain things that he said about teachers do not know how to integrate EE or ESD. And from our research as well, and also from our visitations to school, these are the things that we actually encounter. Teachers, even though we have these 10 elements, we call it element merentas curriculum or cross-curricular elements, 2 of those 10 elements are to do with environment. One of them is global sustainability, and the other one is environmental education. So actually, when we roll out our existing curriculum, which was rolled out in 2017, we came out with a teacher's guide, Buku Panduan Kelestarian Global. That means Teacher's Guide for Global Sustainability. So inside this book, when we roll out, doesn't mean that we don't assist or provide resources for teachers. The curriculum comes with resources, such as textbook or modules, and also certain teacher's guide. So one of it that we actually produce is on global sustainability, which was actually out in 2016, in preparation for the curriculum at that time to be rolled out in 2017. Now, when we talk about environmental education, people, maybe I need to address also. Just now, I was introduced as the Deputy Director of Language and Literature sector. Yes, I was heading that sector for 3.5 years because at that time we had this collaboration with Cambridge English where we aligned our curriculum to CFR. Once that project is done, I was moved to Social Science sector. So under Social Science sector, we have 4 units. Just to give you the background, one of the units in Social Science sector is actually Geography and Environmental Education. And in this unit, there are only 3 people, looking after the whole nation. So it's a colossal task, huge task, but with the support of, I think we have good collaborations with other NGOs, other ministries as well. So when we actually come up with our curriculum, it's not by Curriculum Development Division on its own. We, just like what is happening now, as we are about to roll out, reviewing our curriculum in 2027, we have started with the needs analysis, engagements with various organizations since 2022. So we had 21 engagements in 2022, and it continues this year. And I'm glad to announce that the framework of the 2027 has been approved by the Central Curriculum Committee at the highest level. So we are going ahead, pressing on with that curriculum in 2027. And the preschool will start in 2026. So you are considered very privileged because this is like a teaser. If you have a new firm, this is a teaser to that new firm. So what do we have in this new curriculum is exactly what Mr. Thiagarajan has mentioned. This is also from our various engagements, from the needs analysis, from also the research that we have done. Yes, we agree. The elements across curriculum is not well integrated, is not well conducted in the lessons, in the teaching lessons. Partly because, this we have to agree, maybe not enough capacity building, not enough training on the teachers how to infuse, how to integrate these elements in their teaching lessons. So this is a lesson learned from the Ministry of Education, where in the new curriculum, we will come up with teacher's guide, proper guide, and I think training needs to be done continuously, not just a one-off kind of thing, just before the curriculum is being rolled out. So whatever that has been said in your curriculum, another feature in the new curriculum is interdisciplinary, or we would like to call it transdisciplinary. It's even further, go beyond interdisciplinary. And the good news is people have also been pressuring us, now that geography is only taught in secondary school, starting from Form 1. So we are bringing geography or the elements of geography, particularly environmental education, much earlier, which is in year 3, primary, and it will be an integrated between geography, or we call it environmental science and environmental education from year 3, year 4, year 5. Year 5 and year 6 would be geography on its own. Yeah, but year 3 and 4, it will be integrated. So what else should I say? Maybe that is just a teaser. If you need further teaser, there would be trailer 2 coming up later, all right? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think the teaser worked very well, no? We're all, I think we're all looking forward to see the curriculum, and it's really good to see that some of the elements that were presented are looked into in the current reform that is being done. So let me now bring us to Teacher Samuel, because you work within the education system for several years. So you were a teacher yourself. Now you've moved out, but you're still an educator, I would say, working on several fronts. So building on the two first speakers, if you can deep dive a little bit more on we talked a lot about preparing the teachers. So we've heard that there's a lot of work being done by the government to actually embed it in the curriculum more intentionally and more comprehensively. So from the teacher perspective, we also heard that it has to go beyond the curriculum as well. How can we support the teachers? What are your views so we can make it as effective as possible, no?
I think in order for us to support teachers is really to look at it from the perspective of what it's like in a classroom. If anybody has had the opportunity to be in a classroom today or in the last few years, you would realize that it is a very dynamic environment, very different challenges altogether, from the first class to the last class to the middle class. You have 30 students in the classroom, all with different needs altogether. And if you're looking at it from a school's perspective, they've got multiple areas that they want to focus on. You've got attendance, you've got literacy, post-pandemic learning loss, and all of that. And one of the key areas that was in the brief was, is ESD a priority? And it's tough. From a teacher's perspective, it's really tough. And the findings from Dr. Thiaga and what Dr. Fazlinah has been speaking about is also going back to the teacher. But I would also like to raise the point that it could be too simplistic to also say that every problem can be solved by a teacher. It's really tough. And the key point that you mentioned about support, I think that is extremely, very, very important. What kind of support are we giving teachers? Recently, there has been a shift in the Ministry of Education towards formative assessment, for example. There are a lot of views about how formative assessment is being implemented. The policy is sound. The need for it has been well established over the past 10 to 12 years, if I'm not mistaken. Awareness, advocacy for the need of formative assessment has always also been established. But when you take out that perspective of how it's being implemented within the classroom, everything falls apart. So I think whatever curriculum review that's being done, or the curriculum that's going to be introduced in 2027, that aspect must be given the utmost priority. I think if you look at the Malaysian education blueprint, it has been widely said that the blueprint itself on its own is a very comprehensive document. The 10 shifts, everything that's been there, all the anjakans, it is achievable, it's something that the system is prepared to do, but when you take away that classroom perspective of it, that's where we fall short. So I think what needs to be in conferences like this, if I can advocate for, is to have more teacher voices present. I've not been in the classroom for the last 4 years, so whatever I'm saying may not be relevant to what's happening right now. Just over the weekend, I had the opportunity to work with 30 teachers. And we were exploring the idea of play in the classroom. And we focused a lot on the idea of, you've got the skills, you've got the methodologies, you've got the modules, but we all focused on the mindset. Is the mindset of a teacher ready to embrace play as the core concept of teaching and learning? And there were mixed views about this. And beyond the modules, beyond the skills that we're giving to teachers, I think one of the key areas that we need to focus on is the mindset. I looked at the recent CMEO report on whether teachers are aware about the need for ESD and environmental education. I think the positives from it is that 83% of Malaysian, this study was done in 2019, so I think it's still relevant in that sense. 83% of teachers are aware that environmental education is important. And from that amount, 83% of these teachers are trying in some ways to incorporate environmental education in what they're doing. So I think what we have is a group of teachers that is probably overworked, high-skilled, no sense of motivation in wanting to do a lot of things because different schools have got different needs, different classrooms have got different needs altogether. So I think this is the equation that we need to solve. I would also like to pick upon what he mentioned earlier on about curiosity. I think what I learned from my students, so I taught in an indigenous school for about 10 years. And when you asked me to reflect about the environment, I reflected on two key experiences. My own distinct experience when I was growing up, but the most relevant one was the one I experienced with my indigenous students. They brought me to this place, so this was in 2013. And they were like, "Sir, Mr. Sam, let's go to the river. The place is called Blackwater." And I was like, "Okay, let's go." But to them, when they were telling me, they were like, "Dekat je, cikgu, dekat je." By dekat je, it means nearby. It's just nearby. But in their vocabulary, nearby is, for me, it's near, but for me, it's extremely far. We were like trekking through the jungle for at least an hour and a half until I was like, where is this place, right? Where is this place? But when I got there, I started to look at the environment from their perspectives. Previously, it was always about, wow, this place is beautiful, we can have a good barbecue, we can just hang out. But to them, it's their livelihoods. To them, this is where they come from. To them, this is what they cherish the most, something that they need to protect. And as soon as I got that and I had a peek into their perspectives, I changed the way I was teaching. I changed the way I was approaching what I was doing within the classroom. So I just like to bring it back to the idea of that mindset. And if we can introduce those perspectives to more teachers in Malaysia, I think we've got a good chance.
Thank you very much, Teacher Samuel, and to bring us back to the classroom, which at the end we always talk about the sustainable development, but we always say at the end the impacts is showed at the local level. I think it's the same with education. You have the policy, the curriculum, but at the end things happen in the classroom. So that's a very good reflection on how we bring those values and connection that you were saying. So that brings me to Mr. Thiaga again, because you come from WWF, and we often talk that it's a whole of society. We cannot put everything on Ministry of Education or everything on the teachers. How can we complement? How can other actors, what is needed from other actors as well to complement and change that DNA?
Yeah. So if you look at formal education system, it actually has about 20% of the Malaysian population connected to it. And if we count the parents, even more. Yeah? So the system is very important for us to work on it, to influence, whether influence from the perspective of attitude or behavior. So it's a very important system, but that system, if we don't manage it properly, can also bring detrimental to the nation. So MOE has a lot of responsibility in terms of managing it, safeguarding it, and all those things. So that is one part. Second part is, do we need to look into the system from different perspective? For instance, like that system we inherited from the British education system. Very centralized. Everyone have uniform kind of curriculum and textbook. Now that may differ from state to state, but the content is still the same because based on the curriculum. But British has moved on. They have decentralized the system. They have taken into consideration that the dynamic, like what Sam was saying, the dynamic of the local at each state, or each area or region. Whereas we are still with that same system where that it is all centralized system. And so we need to think about it, whether that is time for us to think from the centralized system or decentralized system. I give an example, like Indonesia. They have local content or content local, where they give 2 hours every Friday for the students to talk about the local issues. Whether it's about rivers, whether it's about flood, whether it's about chili plantations and things like that. So that they understand what's happening around the local level and how the local level is changing and affecting their lifestyle. What they can do, the 2 hours, they can actually combine to 1 day of excursion. That means that in a month, they can have 3 days where the 4 hours, the 2 hours become 1 day because school is about 8 hours, right? And then Saturday, Sunday, they can use these 3 days to go for excursion. And then look into how that they can capitalize that time into outside classroom learning. So we need to look into this kind of innovative way how that we can bring into the system where that children will benefit most. And the other part, the third part is, Sam is giving very practical understanding to us about what is happening at the school level. Teachers are under stress. Teachers' priorities are beyond teaching. They also do a lot of clerical work. They also do a lot of management of the students. They manage the classroom, which ideally, if you look at the curriculum, there should be about 20 students in a class, but we have 40 school students in the classroom. So how that can now be still the same with what is the aspiration of curriculum. So we need to see how that we can manage it. So therefore, there comes to a questions where how others can support the teachers, the NGOs, other government agencies, whether it is vertical education system that we need to look into, horizontal vertical system where it has levels. Vertical means how that others can support, or diagonal, meaning that how the other institutions, whether it's museum, whether it is other set of education instruments that's outside there, that we can capitalize. And school has to be empowered, given that autonomy to actually look into how that they want to use all this dynamic that's outside there. So if that really happened, then perhaps that we are talking about how school institutions as a business unit, if you free from the corporate angle, can be a dynamic unit that we can actually hope for better changes within the macro system, as well as within the individual who are at the leadership level or at the level that's facing the students. I stop there.
Mr. Tagya. So now let's go back. I think you've really brought us to the whole of society approach beyond the school and how you need an ecosystem. If we look at the experience of Sweden, What kind of advice or recommendation based on your experience you would have on how other stakeholders, like be school leaders, ministry, private sector organization, NGO, can also provide support to teachers to enhance education effort in sustainability and environment action?
Well, I really think that this kind of holistic approach is the key, and to recognize that what changes will lead other changes. In other words, how will civil society influence policymakers to allocate resources? How will the advances in the education system also form and shape the civil society? So it's really an ecosystem. Sorry for a metaphor perhaps too close to the subject, but I think, of course, it can be sharpened and it can be evolved. But I think that has been the story of my country, where these things, for various historical reasons, were able to develop in tandem.
Thank you. Let me go to teacher Samuel now, and diving a little bit more into how do we transform? You talked a lot about how you were touched by this, experience with indigenous communities and how it changed your mindset. What can we do to actually make mindset transformation campaigns for children, students, teachers, parents? Because we also often talk about the role of parents. We didn't talk about it yet, but parents have a very important role to play. So what can we do to actually promote that mindset change?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I think I just remembered a session that I moderated a few weeks ago, and I spoke to a couple of students. And I asked them this question: if you had one thing that you would add to the current curriculum that you're learning in school today, what would that be? What would be your guess? What was the answer? Anyone? Sorry? A lot more play? Sorry? What would be your guess? Anyone from the audience? Let's have some answers. What do you think the student said? Dr. Yatela cannot answer because she was there. Sorry? No exams. They answered to the question, what do you want to add to the curriculum? They said nothing. They said there's just way too much already. All right? They were implying that what we were doing is just thinking of more things to add to the curriculum. You've got STEM, you've got, coding, you've got entrepreneurship, this and that, and you're just pushing everything into school, but nobody is asking us what we want. I think I wasn't expecting that answer, to be honest. So I was taken aback. And in that session, there were like a room full of teachers and educators, and we were all taken aback from the answers of the students. So I think, although we are at the forefront of trying to put more, in a nutshell, it's like we are adding stuff into the curriculum, but we must also be very conscious about how much are we putting in. How does that impact the child? How does that affect them? So to answer your question, I think it's more meaningful engagements like this to ensure that their voices are accounted for. In that session that I was having with them, I think we really made sure that this was a safe space for them to share. This was a safe space for them to ensure that nobody's going to criticize them once they go back to school or whatever that is. So I think it's to ensure that we provide them that space to actually voice out their opinions. In another session, if I can add, do you have something to say?
1 minute. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. In another session that I was speaking to students as well, this was last week. So this event was organized by Project ID. Subarna was there as well. So we all in the same space and somehow we all connected. So there was this student, and he is deaf and he can't and dumb, so he can't speak as well. And he was speaking with sign languages, and he was saying that nobody is asking me what I think, and there's no avenue for me to say what I need to say. And all in all, I think when we're speaking about students specifically, is to provide them that opportunity to speak up. And we really need to ensure that. And on parents, I'm just going to end with this point. I think what the Ministry of Education specifically is trying to do, and perhaps needs to do more, is to create more awareness. Because going back to that formative assessment example earlier on, when the Ministry of Education of Malaysia removed centralized exams from primary schools, a lot of parents were not happy about it. So what are parents' expectations to what the education system is providing? I think that is something that we need to define together more actively.
Very good, thank you, Samuel. And I think you've touched on a very important point where we see sometimes adding more, and I see, and I'm from Canada, it's the same. The teachers are voicing very loud that how many topics can you add in one day, and the pressure on the teachers to cover so many topics. So how do we go from an add-on topic to a mainstreaming topics? Like how you embedded it in your book. So when you learn how to read, it's not an add-on, it's just part of the literature. Or how in science project, how science are driving solutions for climate change or development. So it's embedded without being perceived or seen. I think that would be the ideal goal. It's just part of the DNA and it's not perceived as an add-on. So I would like to invite you, Ms. Fazlinah, because you've mentioned in the reform of the curriculum that you are looking at more integrated approach. So how do you see we can do that? So it's not an add-on topic, but it's basically just normal topic embedded into all the topics.
Yeah, get what you mean. All right. One of the suggestions, or if you read Facebook, or if you kind of navigate in Facebook, there are a lot of suggestions saying that there are too many subjects. Yeah, that we need to reduce the number of subjects in primary. So what we have done is, and also from the online survey, which was answered over 60,000 respondents, one of it that they say would be to minimize or lessen the number of subjects. Yeah, and also the other thing that we are also looking into is integrated studies. Yeah, because when you look at the child look at the world as a whole. He or she doesn't look at this is science, this is geography, this is history, but they look the world as a whole. Yeah? So we need to incorporate that in our teaching and learning, in our curriculum as well, where a lot of these subjects need to be integrated so that when they look at the world, for example, climate change, there's science there, there's geography there is also moral education there, so language and so on and so forth. So one of the key features in the new curriculum is integrated studies. Okay, so that means a few subjects would need to be, as I said, transdisciplinary. That means, what's the difference? People keep on saying, what is the difference between interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary? Okay, for example, if it's now, if you look at, for example, if you look at fruits, yeah, you have strawberries, you have yogurt, yeah. So that is strawberry as a subject and then yogurt as a subject. But when you mix them, it becomes yogurt. Yeah, much better. Okay, and then when you blend them, they become a smoothie, isn't it? You don't even see the strawberry or the yogurt or the milk and whatnot. So the transdisciplinary is actually how you actually integrate these subject areas or disciplines so that they become holistic and comprehensive, so that when the child learn about the world in a holistic manner rather than, oh, this is science, this is math, and so on and so forth. Of course, in the new curriculum, we have 3 different levels now. So each level would have its focus. For example, in level 1 the focus would be on literacy and numeracy. So once the child has actually acquired literacy and numeracy, therefore they can move further and apply those learning skills that they have learned, and they can move on to the next stage. So these are also the areas that we have, what you call some of the criticisms when saying there are also children in secondary school who can't read and write. So we need to address that literacy and numeracy issues right in the, what do you call that, the young, very young age. So that is why each level of the schooling level would have different emphasis, yeah? So for level 1, it would be literacy and numeracy. Second one would be more on application, and the third one more on synthesize and creating, and where they come up with innovation, things like that. So what we are looking at is there would be a gradual progress in the knowledge that they acquire, but doesn't mean, because you must remember, preschool is not compulsory yet. So we also have children who have not gone or received any preschool education. So they may come in as not knowing the alphabets or the numbers and so on and so forth. So this is where the teachers need to do differentiated teaching and learning to see where the child is. Yeah? So, a teacher needs to address this accordingly, according to the level of the child's needs and their ability. So, so these are the areas that we are looking into. And as I said earlier, another key features that we have is there would be project-based learning, would be emphasis, inquiry-based learning, where we want the child to not just to find out about certain things, but we want them to think beyond. For example, think about the problems around them, how do they address this problem, what can they contribute, particularly when it comes to environmental education.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, very good, I think. Problem-based learning and embedded environment sustainability, yeah. Thank you very much. I'm mindful of the time I'm looked at. I would like to open for questions and comments from the floor to our distinguished panelists. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rosna. I'm from Pembangunan and also from Alam. I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment because, you know, after hearing all this, and we had some discussions over lunch, how do we prepare the children from very young to really understand sustainability, you know, and climate change. And taking from what Sam says, you know, mindset, early start, etc. And we're discussing perhaps we should put something in our Rukun Negara. I don't know whether you all are aware about Rukun Negara. Now, it started when I was in school, and we had to memorize it. And when my children went to school, the Rukun Negara, the 5 principles, were at the back of the textbook. And I'm sure all of you know the Rukun Negara. Perhaps we should add a 6th one that says to live life sustainably, or to live a sustainable life. And that is an overarching principle that they carry right through from preschool right up to university. They carry Rukun Negara with them. And although it's not a question, I just like to throw to Puan Fazlinah as a challenge for you to champion this, to maybe add the 6th principle. And, you know, I mean, from young, they will learn the word sustainable and what it means to their life.
Yeah.
And this is not my idea. This actually is Tan Sri Zakri's idea, but he's left, so I thought I'd just jury his idea and, you know, share it with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Puan, for that suggestion. The 6th one, to live sustainably. Okay. If we look at our Rukun Negara, there is one, kesopanan dan kesusilaan. Yeah? When you say kesusilaan, that means when we live, you have to live in certain way, structured way, to think about others, to be mindful of others. That can also encapsulate the sustainability. However, if I were to bring it up, if I were to champion this, I have to bring it to Parliament. Yeah. So if ever. Okay, maybe we can whisper to the Minister of Education, since she talks a lot about climate change education. But if I were to say that, she would, I know what the answer would be. Because this has been the Rukun Negara for umpteenth years, you know, and I'm sure when the think tank that were looking into this Rukun Negara, they also actually have done a lot of homework on what should constitute or what should they include in the Rukun Negara. However, it's a very what do you call that, insightful also when you talk about sustainability. Because the thing is, we don't know the term, the buzzword sustainability will be around in 20 years or not. There could be a different term after 20 years. Then maybe we have to keep on changing the rukun negara. Every 20 or 30 years then, because there would be another buzzword that needs to be included in the rukun negara. All right?
My advice from left field would be, if you can sneak in the word Madani, I'm sure Anwar would jump at it.
Other comments or questions, reflections? It's good. We're almost at 5 o'clock and everyone's still laughing and engaged. So that's a good. We manage, I hope, to keep the session lively. Any other questions or comments? No? Yes, there is one over there.
Oh, thank you.
If you can introduce yourself, yeah.
Hi, my name is Sasha. I'm actually from Bank Pembangunan as well. My question is for Puan Fazila. So you mentioned that the new curriculum is going to be rolled out in 2027. So I was wondering if you could share with us what happens between now and 2023 and 2027 in terms of improving ESD.
A lot of things are going on currently. One of it is we are in the process of mapping. But as I said, geography or environmental education is only going to be introduced in 2029, in year 3. Therefore, we still have time to engage with various agencies. The next one that we're going to have, where we're going to invite all the agencies and ministries that are related to environmental education to give feedback. One of it would be Mr. Thiagarajan. I'm sure he's waiting for that invitation letter. Okay, once that is done, then we do the mapping. The mapping will be done, for example, if we have moral education, it will be mapped from year 1 right up to Form 5. That means the upper secondary. So that's where you need to see the progression of the knowledge, and also how areas or disciplines that need to be included, or topics that need to be included. Okay, that is one, yeah, mapping. And the second one is, now that we have these elements across the curriculum, which going to be mapped out against all the subjects. It's no longer as elements, merentas curriculum or cross-curricular elements, because from our research, teachers tend to ignore, or they don't think it's important enough to be included in their PDP. So we need to map out. For example, there's also literacy kewangan, financial literacy, which is also under my sector, sustainable, global sustainability, environmental education, and there's also this, another feature is character building, which is also going to be a main focus in our new curriculum. Yeah. So once the mapping and then the mapping of the elements of the curriculum, that's where the development of the curriculum would start. That's where we engage with various panel. They are from, teachers, lecturers from university, IPG lecturers, NGOs, depending on, for example, your subject. For example, if it's geography, they would invite a lot of environmental education, FRIM, Jabatan Pengaliran Air, Drainage and Irrigation System, Kementerian Belia dan Sukan, and all this. So that is in the planning, because I actually prepared my PowerPoint to show you how the process of the curriculum, but somehow they said I wouldn't have time to present that. So because we did 2022 this year, needs analysis with all the research and all the reports that we have together, all the different policies, all the trends, global trends. We also did comparison with at least 20 countries on their curriculum. And also, we also look at, for example, policies like TVET, children's policy, and all this, plus our convention, curriculum conventions. a host of a lot of things, for our as the needs analysis. Okay, once it's mapped out, that's where the curriculum starts to be developed, and we need to give the textbook division 18 months. 18 months for them to come up with the resources, and also to the examination syndicate for them to prepare for the items for examination, particularly for SPM. So when we talk about, it looks as if like you have 3 years, right? 24, 25, 26. But actually it's very, very short, because we have to give that 18 months to the other divisions to prepare for their textbook or resources, and also for examination. So basically we have about 1.5 to 2 years only to come up with a new curriculum. All right, does that answer your question? All right.
Thank you, Ms. Fazlinah. I think it shows the depth and the thorough work that is going to reviewing the curriculum that cannot be switched from one day to the other. No? But I could also sense the urgency from the young generation saying, whoa, 5 years is a long time, before 27. So as we need to close the panel, I would like to give 30 seconds to 1 minute to each of our panelists to say, what's your wish between now and 2027, if we need to take one action to change education on sustainable. Oh, there was one more question. Do we have time? I'm looking at who's managing do we have time for one more question?
Okay, thank you.
Time for one more.
Yeah, I just want to have a question about education system. I think, do you have the orally history, for example, in part of a Malaysian curriculum? Because I notice many of the students still doesn't know what is oral history, and the story oral history they don't learn much in the school. So I want to know if do you have any effort in putting in oral history story and history in the curriculum?
Okay, thank you for the question. All right, for the Orang Asli, okay, just to give you a little bit of background, we have 3 indigenous language that we come up with the curriculum, which is for Semai language, Kadazan Dusun language, as well as Iban. We are also in the process of providing a framework. For example, if Bidayuh wants to offer, if there are enough children and the parents request for Bidayuh, for example, they can actually look at this framework, and they can also come up with a program for the school. So depending on what you call that request from parents, if you have 15 children in one school would like to learn a language, then the school needs to provide and find a teacher to provide that teaching for that particular language. Yeah? And also for these indigenous languages, the slant or the focus is actually to maintain their heritage. There's a lot of songs and rhymes that are from that indigenous language. Plus, for example, poems, folklores, so which are also retained in the curriculum, yeah? Because one of the focus in this indigenous language curriculum is actually to maintain and to ensure the sustainability of that culture. So that is also part in the curriculum, the main focus. And having said that, when we for example, come up with curriculum, we also actually invite Jakwa, a lot of NGOs that are related to indigenous languages. Like, for example, if it's Kadazan Dusun, maybe we invite 7 to 8 NGOs with authority, yeah? Because to come up with a language, some people say, oh, I want for Bidayuh, I want for Orang Sungai and this and that. They must remember, in order for you to come up with a curriculum, first of all, you need to have that corpus of language. Yeah? And then you must make sure that you have people, teachers, to actually teach. And teachers need to be trained as well. So it's a process that, for example, Semai now, they have come up with their own corpus, their own dictionary and things like that. Yeah, of course, Iban has been established a long time ago. But these are the things, the process that you need. Not as easy, okay, today I want Bidayuh. Yeah? Tomorrow I want Bahasa Siam or the Siamese language. There are a lot of requests for languages, Siamese language, even Marathi, Malayalam, Punjabi and whatnot. So it's not as easy as, okay, the minute you ask for it, we will do it, because you need to actually study the feasibility of these languages to be offered in school as well. If you have the curriculum but you don't have the teachers, it also defeats the whole purpose. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I wish we could continue with more. Well, actually, I'm already over time as the moderator, so I just want to look. Can we continue? I just need a sign
okay, we
if
can
it's okay
talk,
to continue, or we
over
just
coffee.
Yeah, I think we'll continue over coffee. Whereas, unfortunately, no. Sorry for this. No. Yeah.
Cannot.
Okay, so if we can, I'm sorry, but I'm asked to. We'll have to close the panel. Sorry. So I would like to give 30 seconds. What's your wish between now and 2027? 30 seconds each, so we can wrap up. Over to you, Thiaga. Yeah.
Glad that character education is in the planning, reviving that. But my only wish, if that can be introduced within this planning process, is the policy on EE and ESD, because that's the mother of changes that we are looking at. With that statement of the policy as well as implementation strategy will be very clear. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Thiaga. Teacher Samuel, yeah?
Right. I've got 2 points. I'll wrap it up in 30 seconds. Point number one, I think the ministry needs to focus on the sharing of best practices. What are teachers doing that are really, really working in classrooms and schools in relation to ESD? I think that would be fantastic. Find these champion teachers, highlight them, scale their practices. I think the second point I'd like to focus on is better public-private partnerships. I think for us to achieve whatever goal that we want to achieve, we need to do it together. We need to, the ministry, non-profits, private sectors, everybody, we need to try to rely on each other's reach and expertise to contribute this. Because I think we are not, from an NGO's perspective, we are not competing with the Ministry of Education. The idea is not to create a parallel system or an opposing system altogether. We need to do this together to achieve the intended outcome. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fazlinah,
Okay,
30 seconds.
yeah.
Your wish.
My wish is, as a curriculum developer, when you develop the curriculum, there are certain aspirations that you want the children to acquire. Yeah. So of course, when you talk about curriculum, the curriculum is just a document. Yeah. What makes it alive? The curriculum are the teachers. Yeah. If the curriculum can be translated and able to be translated well in the classroom, then it becomes alive. Or else it's just paper. Yeah. So we need to work closely and also to build capacity building for our teachers and to support them as much as possible, particularly when it comes to new curriculum. Of course, there are many new elements. So continuous training needs to be done properly. And my wish is, for example, school principals. Yeah, they must be that curriculum instructional. They must have that leadership for curriculum instructional, because some principals, they are so hung up on maintaining their CGPA or whatever, so that they look well across all the other schools. Yeah, we don't want that. We want principals to have that autonomy to think what's best for the school, because no two schools, they are the same. So every school is unique, and you have different set of students, you have different set of teachers. Therefore, they must have autonomy and ensure that the curriculum and the children receive the education as aspired in the curriculum. That's all I wish before I retire.
Thank you. Dr. Joachim, no? Last 30 seconds.
So a million years ago, I studied psychology, and the one thing I remember is that for the memory and for education to work, we need not to jam in a lot of facts. We need to create an emotional bond to the subject. And so my wish would be for new ways to creatively teach in order to foster that kind of emotional bond that would ensure long-lasting learning and curiosity.
Thank you very much. I think this was such an exciting panel. Very, very good. I'll close. I think we've discussed so many topics, but the importance of early exposure, the importance of integrated approach and mainstreaming, the role of teachers starting from the classroom, not from looking at it external, the importance of multi-stakeholder engagement, touching, I would say, the heart, not only the data and the mind, but the connection to nature. So I would close on this, my wish, if we can all go back home, read a story to our child, bring someone in nature, just doing one thing to build that bonding and that connection, I think we've succeeded on something today, and let's hope it will have a triple effect for everyone. No? So thank you very much for staying until the end of the day, and thank you to our panelists. That was a wonderful session. No? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manon Benier, and also our panelists. I would like to invite Datin Sainul Salwa Sani onto the stage to present them with our tokens of appreciation. Ms. Manon Benier, Deputy Resident Representative of UNDP Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Darussalam, His Excellency Dr. Hoachim Bergstrom, the Swedish Ambassador to Malaysia, Ms. Fazlinah Said, the Director of the Curriculum Development Division in the Ministry of Education, Samuel Isaiah, the Head of Education Initiatives for YTL Foundation, and the recipient of the Merdeka Award, and last but not least, Mr. Thiagarajan Nadeson, the Associate Director for Peninsula Malaysia and Sustainable Market in WWF Malaysia. Round of applause once again, please, for our panelists. Mr. Manon, a quick photo op. Sure, can. Our panelists can kindly make their way to the front of the stage for the photo op.